Alright guys, welcome to the North Carolina video. This is the ultimate ship to learn how to play Battleship on. This should be the first Battleship you try and get. Despite the North Carolina being a little bit tricky to get with Colorado and New Mexico and New York being along the way. And those ships not being particularly fun to play due to their slow speed and lack of armor. It's well worth getting the price of getting this ship. It is the purest battleship, I would say, in this game. It has very accurate guns that hit really hard with a standard 30-second reload. It has good armor, but not any gimmicky armor that keeps you safe when you go broadside. When you go broadside, you will get citadeled in this ship. It has tanky enough armor that it can shatter some high explosive with its 30mm or 38mm deck. And its AA isn't bad. It used to be a pretty big monster as far as AA was concerned before the rework, but now it's just kind of okay because all AA isn't very good anymore. But the reason you should get this ship is it rewards you for playing well and it punishes you for playing badly. So positioning, it's key to position yourself well in this ship, and if you do, you really get rewarded. So if you're getting onto people's broadsides, this ship's going to reward you for positioning in a way to get those broadsides, and if you aim properly. The problem is, of course, the slow shell speed. So what you have to remember with this ship is to almost lead more than you think until you get used to the shells. I am actually using a modded version of the aiming reticle, which allows me to lead at exactly what the second timer says, as long as the ship is going 30 knots. So my reticle is calibrated to 30 knots, which is the majority of the ships you're going to fight against. And as you can see, you know, that Bismarck wasn't even that broadside, and we hit him pretty hard. So we're trying to stay out of his secondary range, obviously, because that's where he gets to be stronger. Yeah, this ship is really good against broadsides, and even angled ships too. If you aim for superstructures or overmatching, you can overmatch 25mm. But here, as you can see, I'm just kind of sitting out above the captures point at A here. Or D, sorry. That's what you want to do. You want to be supporting your DDs, supporting your cruisers, and shooting at whatever's broadside, really. Whatever's giving you the best shot, that's what you want to shoot at. And with this ship, because the concealment's so good, as you can see at 12.3, I believe, you're actually able to pretty much go dark whenever you feel like it. You see how close I am into this fight here? And sure, we're plane spotted right now, but we were dark, not lit up, which is nice because that lets you catch people by surprise. Not in this case, but later on you'll see sometimes people just forget that you're there, especially if they haven't enabled on their minimap show last known positions. That's really, really crucial to do if you're in a cruiser, or actually any ship really. You should just always enable that, because as you can see on the minimap, all those little grayed out ships on the map, that was the last known position. It's really handy to know that kind of stuff. But some people don't enable that, and being able to go dark in between shots and then get lit up when you shoot again can catch people off guard, which is pretty nice. As you can see, our team's starting to push here. We finally got our DDs kind of in a position where they can go spot for us and screen for torpedoes, so that's why I'm moving up now. Also, most of our team is here, so we do have to take this capture zone. We have to push around this flank because we've already lost our other side. So it's time to go. I probably should have pushed up a little bit sooner, but that Bismarck pushed up on their team pretty hard, so I didn't really want to take a brawl fight with him. Yeah, just playing with your team like this is huge for you, because your ship doesn't do that well alone. Since you only have main guns that reload every 30 seconds, you don't have secondaries. to help you deal with cruisers or destroyers that are pushing up on you. You just have your main guns, but they are really nice main guns, as you can see, hitting 3 shells on a cruiser that was angled pretty hard to us. And since we overmatch, we just get to full pen him and kill him there. Yeah, this game's not looking super great for us. You know, my team's trying to go down middle for some reason, and we haven't even got this D cap, and the enemy team has control of 2 caps. We have killed a fair number of their ships, so that's why we're still ahead on points, but it's time to push now. Unfortunately for us, the aircraft carrier is going to be a bit of a nuisance. North Carolina can deal with it pretty well as long as you stick with your team, but you don't really want to be caught out alone against an aircraft carrier, and that's soon to be where we're at, since we have to push this ahead of our team, because our team doesn't really want to push around this island despite there only being 2 ships here. As you can see there on that KGV, the guns are nice. The guns on this ship are nice, and that's why you want to play this ship, because it rewards you for good aim and positioning well. And those are the 2 biggest things that you need in order to be successful in other battleships. Some other battleships are better brawlers or better snipers, but not a lot of ships have this combination of being reasonably tanky, having good concealment so you can position yourself, and really accurate shells that hit really hard. Not a lot of ships have that combination, and that's why this ship is such a good trainer. Is the concealment can kind of get you out of trouble sometimes, along with the armor. I should mention this heal on this ship was buffed a while ago, and instead of healing for, I think it'd be around 11,000 HP, it actually heals for around 14,000 instead, and it heals more of the damage that comes in, so that you don't find yourself, you know, after using like 1 or 2 heals, being unable to heal any of the damage because it was all heavy or medium damage. So yeah, that's a nice buff. It wasn't really needed, I don't think, since North Carolina is still, or was even before this buff, one of the best battleships at its tier. Massachusetts is probably a bit better for carrying potential, just because at closer ranges, late game, you can push in and get your secondaries going and really take the fight to the enemy. This ship wants to be in that 10 to 15 kilometer range. That's where you're at your strongest, I think. You're not so close that you're just going to take massive damage from ships that just were going to hit you no matter what, but you're also not so far away that you can't hit your shots. But that said, the ship is still dangerous out to 23.5 kilometers. It's just, it takes a while to understand the lead at those ranges. And yeah, so we killed that last Hindenburg, and now we really have to push. As you can see, my team is still just kind of hiding behind me. Despite me not losing that much health, for some reason they were shooting at my team instead of me. But sometimes this happens where nobody wants to start the push, but often I've found people are willing to push in behind you, and so sometimes that's just what you gotta do. As you can see, we're dealing all right with the planes. We killed a fair number after the drop. You're pretty much never gonna kill all the planes before the drop. Carriers are just always gonna get that off, but still not a bad ship. The other thing I'd say with North Carolina is don't move up to Iowa. If you're trying to learn battleships, that is. If you're trying to just get to Montana, obviously you'd move to Iowa after you've finished grinding the ship. But I actually wouldn't move up to Iowa or Montana until you really feel comfortable in North Carolina, if you're trying to learn how to play battleships. Because this ship has, honestly, a lot of tools that the Iowa doesn't get in its concealment. Is worse on the Iowa. The Iowa doesn't turn as well, so North Carolina, since it has a pretty insane turning radius, it allows you to angle in and out to shells better than a ship like Iowa. So you'll feel a lot more clumsy, honestly, in a ship like Iowa compared to this ship. And in fact, I would prefer to have a North Carolina at tier 9 and play that instead of Iowa. I just, for some reason, have never really enjoyed playing Iowa or Missouri. They've never really felt that amazing to me. I guess maybe that's just because North Carolina was so good at its tier, but I think it's also partially due to the maneuverability. North Carolina just feels really nice and small and maneuverable, which is really nice when you're trying to dodge aircraft coming in, or different shells trying to angle in and out to them. I should say, though, that Iowa and Montana have been buffed since, well, this is a long time ago buff, but their citadels were lowered a long time ago, and before that was also another reason to kind of stay on North Carolina. It had a slightly smaller citadel. So Iowa not only was more clumsy, had a way bigger turning radius, it also had a really easy to hit citadel. So I think a lot of people found that they moved up to Iowa and they ended up dying faster than they did in North Carolina. So that's not necessarily the case now, but I still just enjoy the concealment of the ship and the maneuverability. That combination is so nice. And an interesting part about this game and its aiming system is the slower your shells are, the better your accuracy actually is. So North Carolina having one of the slowest shells in the game actually means that you're more accurate than an Iowa. North Carolina also gets 2.0 Sigma, which is the tendency to go to the middle of that dispersion ellipse, and Iowa gets 1.9, as does Montana. So this ship is kind of interesting in that it's almost the peak of the line, I would say. As far as its power at its tier, the North Carolina at tier 8 is more powerful at tier 8 than Iowa is at tier 9 or Montana is at tier 10. And just to go back to what I said about slow shells getting better dispersion, it has to do with how the dispersion ellipse, the size of it, is drawn on the water. So if your shells are slower, they come in at a higher angle, and that dispersion ellipse isn't stretched out across the water nearly as much as if they come in at a low angle to the water. That kind of ellipse is drawn really long along the water. So I guess it maybe isn't vertical, or it isn't horizontal dispersion that's better. It's vertical dispersion that has really helped out when the shells are slower. And of course, you want really good vertical dispersion for times when people are broadside, because you want nice flat shells all going into the citadel. As you can see, if people shoot your belt armor, they're just going to bounce. So North Carolina's not bad in a brawl, but obviously Colorado's terrible in a brawl. And since we overmatch his armor everywhere, we can just kind of shoot wherever we want to, whenever we want to, and get massive damage. You see how I kind of zoomed out there? When you're up close with ships, you don't want to be fully zoomed in, because your turrets won't turn very quickly in that view. In fact, the automatic turn when locked on to target actually stops functioning at a certain range. So you want to zoom out and manually move your mouse across the screen to follow a target at a certain point. The other thing is, when you're up close with ships, you'll want to zoom out, and the guns will actually depress lower than they seemingly should on the model if you're at the right zoom level, which is either at the view right behind your gun turrets, or one tick zoomed in where you can't see your ship, but you're basically right at the gun muzzle. At those kind of view aiming areas, the guns will actually go lower than what they will when you're fully zoomed in. And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but when you're in a brawl, you really need to be at that zoom level, because you'll need to aim low to get those citadel hits if you go broadsides with someone. But yeah, not to say North Carolina is very good in a brawl, because it does have a vulnerable citadel if somebody gets on your side. So you do really just kind of have to point your nose at people. You can get all three of your turrets off relatively safely. That's where the maneuverability comes in again. People will be able to citadel you if you are getting all of your guns off. It won't matter if you're kiting away, like in this example about to be here, or if you're bow into them. They can citadel you, but it's not so easy. Here I'm slowing down and turning out to try and angle my armor a little bit better and try to throw off his aim. So fortunately we managed to survive there. As you can see, that heal's pretty massive, and we do some pretty solid damage back to him. We probably would have died there if we would have stayed broadside. By turning out like that, we actually dip our belt armor down below the water, and that actually hides our citadel just a little bit. What I was really trying to do was get to this angle, because at this angle it's a little harder for him to deal massive damage to me. He ends up switching to HE, so we don't actually get to see what his AP would have done at an angle like this, but you can take my word for it that this is a better, definitely a better angle to be at. But he still could citadel me here at this angle. I'm by no means perfectly safe here. So that's why the maneuverability is nice, to wiggle back and forth to get all your guns off and then angle properly so people can't citadel you. Yeah, the North Carolina is a really good ship for learning. As you can see, we get a defense expert, and we end up actually getting a crack. So, pretty solid game. I just decided I wanted to do a North Carolina video, and this was actually my very first game of my stream. I just went in, played this game, and oh, okay, I guess it's good to go. So, pretty hilarious. But I guess that just shows you how good and consistent this ship is as far as learning goes. So, pretty solid carry, I'd have to say, and it was a really fun game. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to check out my stream, I'm for the most part streaming every weekday, but yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a good day.